Hanoi Rocks for all of us, and we all just bowed to that altar. It was just, they were the band. Everybody was into Hanoi Rocks. That's how, I mean, in 1983, that's really my beginning story of Jetboy and Guns N' Roses. Is Fern and I used to travel to Los Angeles with a good friend of ours, Diane, who used to love Wasp. And this is before the first Wasp record. So we used to hitch a ride with her to L.A., and they'd be playing the Troubadour. First time we went with her, it was 1983. And I just remember vividly this dude standing in front in, like, black hair, white shirt, white creepers, you know, tight black jeans with safety pins going up the front, you know, black fingernails. And you know, we were pretty much the same with the creepers. And we just started talking, and it was Izzy, you know. And then here comes Chris Webber, and here comes Bill, which is Axl. And we all completely clicked over Hanoi Rocks and Girl and Lords of the New Church and Johnny Thunders. And they had Hollywood Rose going at the time. Mm-hmm. And we used to go and hang out. You know, we all became like this friends. And we didn't have Jetboy going, but we had the name. And we always said, it's like, you know, they were doing Hollywood Rose but I think, you know, I guess things were kind of like starting to shift or whatever, but we always said, like, oh, we got to start doing shows together when we got our bands up and running and all that. And we kept in touch. And every time Fern and I would go to L.A., which was often back then, we'd just meet up and hang out. You know, we used to go to shows and never go into the shows. You know, Izzy and I would sit outside and drink peppermint schnapps and listen to his ghetto bosser with all the shit we love from Girl and Hanoi Rocks. And, you know, we'd go to a Rough Cut show, but we could care less about watching Rough Cut. We would rather sit and just hang out in the scene in the parking lot and listen to the stuff we wanted to listen to, you know. and that's where our relationship started, you know, and that's where the whole scene started. Where we met, like, Tammy and Tracy Guns and, you know, all the guys who were starting those bands. We were all, like, new up-and-coming bands at the time.
It's such a pool of talent. Yeah. So, like, and you were friends. Like, this is what I always found interesting. This all the talented people that were involved. And like you just said, you weren't Jetboy yet. They weren't Guns N' Roses yet. You know, what made you, if you were also friends, like, how did you decide who would be in, like, what band? Like, why couldn't have you recruited Bill, a.k.a. Axl, to be in Jetboy or Izzy to be in Jetboy? Right. How did you kind of pick teams, so to speak, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. But I guess really we were from San Francisco. And we kind of had a core of a band back home. You know, we had Ron was on drums and Todd was playing bass, and we were really looking for that singer. You know, and Izzy and Axl were, you know, they were the Keith and Mick, Joe Perry and Steven Tyler. I mean, that's what those guys were. You know, I always, you know, when it comes to the GNR, I really just do the hats off to those two guys, and you know, especially Izzy. I think he's the underrated guy of the band who, you know, he was a huge part of what that band became on that first record, you know.
Oh, for sure.
I feel, you know, that's my opinion, you know. But
when you were playing those early shows, Jetboy with Guns N' Roses, what did you view as the strength of GNR at that time? Was it, like you were talking about earlier, kind of the Joe Perry, Steven Tyler, Keith Richards, Mick Jagger thing between Axl and Izzy? What did you view as the strengths of GNR at that time?
You know, when we were doing gigs together, all these bands I mentioned over there, we were all rough around the edges, trying to figure it out. Everybody just had a huge passion for wanting to be in a band, having a band, and just being, you know, showing the influences of what we were so into at the time. But yeah, for Guns N' Roses, it really was the chemistry of every one of those guys. It just worked. It just clicked. It's like every guy had a part and a role. They all had a different look for the most part. You know, yeah, it's kind of like rock and roll, just like blonde surfer dude, Steven on drums, you know, Duff, the punk guy with, you know, the long hair punk dude, and Izzy's kind of the Keith Richards, you know, Stonesy guy. Axl was, you know, he had that punk Hanoi Rocks vibe, Michael Monroe, you know, and, you know, Slash had that Joe Perry, but he also kind of dipped into that Michael Schenker in a way, you know. type thing. So they had a real unique thing going, and it really goes for all of us, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
I remember Axl telling Mick stories, you know, going like, man, when you came out with that mohawk and the lights and the green, it was like this like reptile, you know. I remember him saying shit like that, because Mick and Axl used to really connect on like this front man kind of thing, you know, not like trying to outdo each other, but really kind of like admiring each other a lot.
Like talking shop, maybe?
Both, yeah, talking shop, and just like they really both were like kind of ahead of their time in ways, but yet they were shining influences of what they grew up on, you know?
I love this one. This is Back to School Bash with Jetboy, plus a special guest from Hollywood, Guns N' Roses, at the Stone.
Right.
So what can you tell us about those early days, the Back to School Bash, where you giving away, you know, erasers and pencil sharpeners? Well, like what's a Back to School Bash with Jetboy and Guns N' Roses?
Yeah, it was just a title, you know. I can remember,
silly.
You know, a lot. Yeah, being silly and just kind of having something to catch people's eye, and it was, you know, it was kids back then. We were all kids. We were all like, I was right out of high school, in high school. Graduating was like right after. It was like my first show with Jetboy. We were all still pretty young, into our early 20s, and you know, you just put stuff together with something, a catchy phrase. You know, I know GNR did a lot of that. You know, the Surgeon General warns you that, you know, whatever, you know, a live performance of the Guns N' Roses is hazardous to your health. You just kind of put shit like this on your flyers, and it was punk rock, and you know, you did it yourself, and we all made our own flyers, and that was, you know, like Show at the Stone. That's what we would do. They would come up and open for us in SF, and we would go down to LA, and we open for them, you know, on their turf, you know, and then it became time where we all were headliners. But we did more shows with them in LA than in San Francisco. So we did, you know, quite a few on the club level with Jetboy and Guns N' Roses. And we clicked. We just had this thing that just worked great together.
And I'm looking at another flyer right now that says Reckless Life, but with the W, because of course their song would be Reckless with just the R. So I don't know if that's where the infancy of that song came, or if you were just in a kind of a sailing mood at the time, talking about wrecking a ship. But it's just so cool to see these. Like, who would decide when it was a double bill, like how to make the poster? Did you guys? Was it a collaborative thing? I know it's so simple, but.
Right. I think the ones for San Francisco, I would do them, and I would just put a flyer together, really. You know, grab their photo, and then the ones in L.A., we would just send them a photo, or whoever was putting the flyer together. I don't know if it was Vicky Hamilton at the time or Izzy or whatever, but they would just grab an image, and they would do the flyer, you know, because we wouldn't really be able to promote much being in SF, except for we'd do BAM ads and stuff like that. Yeah.
So can you take us back?
That's the stuff
Go ahead.
That's the stuff I don't really remember too vividly on who did what when it comes to that. But
no, good. I'm just trying to get kind of the, you know, the view of what, you know, as much as I can through your eyes of what that scene was like. Because I actually just now I'm thinking of, you know, all you have to go through to make a flyer back in those days. Now, Photoshop, printer.
Yeah,
just, you could do it in 2 seconds. So
it
had to have cost you guys a lot of money to do that back then.
Yeah. Flyers were a huge deal back then. You really put your just everything into that flyer, and then when you could work up the pain for a BAM ad, it was even bigger. And, you know, that we're on the flyer story. I can remember one story that I flew down to L.A. like, I don't know, I guess it was like, I think GNR, it was GNR and Guns N' Roses and Jetboy at the Country Club. And it must have been 85, 86, whatever. And so I flew down, and our manager, Bridget, picked me up, and I went and stayed with Izzy, and I flew down, and we grabbed flyers, and we went around town and just pasted them with, I remember I brought wheat paste, you know, you paste it on shit. Izzy's like, well, we're going to get in trouble for that. So I'm like, no, just paste it all over the place, who cares? And we would go post it around, but we went and borrowed, we needed a car, and I don't remember, I want to say it was Wes's car. It was a station wagon, and I don't know if it was whatever. It was in a parking lot, and Izzy didn't have a license. I had a license, so I'm driving the car. Izzy's in the passenger seat, and we're about to pull out like on Hollywood Boulevard to hit the flyers, and this big mound of red hair ratted out, looks through the window because it was like almost like an El Camino with the sliding windows behind the driver area. And it was Axl sleeping back there. And I just remembered he waking up like, you know, what's going on? You know, where are we going? He was like sleeping in the car. So I don't remember if he just went for the ride and slept the whole time or whatever, but I just remember shit like that is what we did, you know. It was very DIY, and we did what we could to promote the band. We did anything we could. We would steal a car to do that if we had to.
Billy, just to further, I'd love you setting the scene there of what things were like for the bands promoting shows back then. What was it like at a venue at like the Stone or the Country Club? Was it like 200 people, 500, 100? Was it like, you know, mostly, you know, kind of like a lot of young rockers and kind of strippers or whatnot? Put us in the room there, man. What's it like? What are you seeing out from the stage?
Well, yeah, the Stone was probably a good 300 or more. Maybe it could fit up to 5, and the same with the Country Club. The Country Club could have been more, you know. But the time we played, I mean, when you would look out at certain levels, like the Troubadour and all that, a lot of the shows, the Roxy, the Whiskey, when we got to a certain point, it was packed. It was everything. It was a ton of hair, hats, eyeliner, hot chicks, you know, cool-looking rock dudes or dudes looking like chicks or whatever, just super glammed out. You know, that was really the audience. It was always just packed with tons of fun. You know, it was sex, drugs, and rock and roll, as cliche as that is, you know, these days. That's really what it was.